We ready?
Let's see what the iPhone, the official world clock says.
Okay. I don't have to gavel us to order. That's just
Sure.
the end, right?
Yeah, big, yeah, there you go.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 12th, 2021 meeting of the City of Sugar Land Planning and Zoning Commission. Good evening, Commissioner, and to all the commissioners and to those present. Our first item on the agenda is item 3, public comment. Do we have anyone signed up for option 1, 2, or 3 of public comment? All right, then we will move on to item 4A, consideration of and action on the minutes of the March 8, 2022 meeting. Commissioners, you've got the minutes in your packets. Any comments or discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Got a motion to approve by Commissioner Landine. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I've got a second by Commissioner Parikh. Any further discussion? If you'll please vote at this time. And that passes unanimously among the members present. Item 5A, we've got a series of public hearing items. What we will do is take them one at a time. We'll listen to the city staff presentation first, then I'll open and close the public hearing. So right now, we will talk about the proposed conditional use permit in the general business B2 district for the establishment of a mini warehouse and self-storage for Sugar Park Lane storage on approximately 1.7995 acres located near the intersection of US 90A and Sugar Park Lane to the east of University Boulevard. Brittany Zhao, Planner 1.
Wanted to formally introduce Brittany to y'all as is our custom when we have newer staff. Some of y'all briefly met her. She sat in on a workshop some time back, but this is her first case with the Planning and Zoning Commission. She's been presenting to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. So without further ado, we'll let Brittany go ahead and take over.
Thank you, Doug. Good evening, Brittany, and welcome. Happy to have you.
Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you, Doug, for the introduction. So, as the Commissioner said, this is a CUP for Sugar Park Lane storage, which is a proposed mini storage site off of Sugar Park Lane and US 90 Alt. So you can see here, this black section is where the proposed site is, and it is zoned general business B2. And here is an aerial. Currently, this is a vacant property between Moody Bank, Discount Tire, and the Crescent Rehabilitation Center. This property was annexed into the city in 1980 and consequently zoned as B2. The applicant is proposing an approximately 100,119 square foot mini warehouse and self-storage with 3 stories of climate-controlled indoor self-storage and 17 parking spaces. There are no nearby residential properties, and all activity and storage of inventory is proposed to be inside the structure. This conditional use permit aligns with the future land use plan as neighborhood commercial and services. Access to the site will be from Sugar Park Lane from the northeast, which is an existing public street off of US 90 Alt. Customers can then either turn into the parking area by the proposed office, continue down to the first entry doors or the loading and unloading area, or they can continue to the rear of the building for additional entry or unloading and loading areas. There is short-term parallel parking proposed next to the entry doors of the site to provide for 2 to 3 vehicles at each entry at any one time. After unloading or loading, customers can then continue driving around the building to the exit-only drive at the southeast to exit the property. Here's the proposed site plan. Here you can see there is an access easement that is split between 2 properties. And then here is a joint access easement at the bottom. So this is the entrance. Customers would come through here and drive around, and then here's the exit. And then here are the proposed parallel parking spaces. Here are the proposed elevations. This site is proposed to be approximately 45 feet tall, and the facade will be made of a mixture of materials of stucco, stone, and architectural metals. There is also some proposed vines and greenery on the sides for screening purposes. And then here we have the proposed landscape plan. As you can see, there are many trees surrounding the property that will have at least a 4-inch caliper. As stated before, this property is located in an area proposed for use as neighborhood commercial services in the future land use plan. The neighborhood commercial services category consists of conventional car-oriented retail and services, for example, small offices, religious institutions, and other low-impact commercial uses that serve local residential neighborhoods. Per the Development Code requirements, notification was posted in the local newspaper and on the city's website regarding this public hearing. Property owners within 200 feet of the proposed site were notified, and a courtesy sign was posted on site. An online form was made available to provide comments prior to this meeting. However, staff has not received any inquiries and is not aware of any opposition. It is important to note, once again, that this 1.7995 acre vacant commercial reserve was annexed in 1980 and is zoned as B2. The sites near this property are also zoned as B2 with uses of medium to high intensity, and there are no shared property lines with single-family residential zoning districts. Therefore, staff believes this requested CUP appears compatible with existing uses in the surrounding area. However, the P&Z Commission may recommend additional conditions on the CUP which would ensure that this property is redeveloped as proposed and mitigate any negative impacts on the surrounding area. This proposed use appears well suited to the location as it is located off of a major highway, US 90 Alt, and in the Sugar Park Lane cul-de-sac. Proposed layout uses an existing access easement which branches off of Sugar Park Lane. Staff recommends that this site be developed in accordance with the attached site plan, elevations, landscaping plan, and photometric plan, on the condition that no outside storage of items is permitted, and all loading and unloading cars must be stored inside the storage building. Loading and unloading will occur at the main entrance, and the proposed circulation plan should be followed. I'll be open to questions from the Commission after the public hearing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Brittany. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. We will receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on the proposed conditional use permit in the general business B2 district for the establishment of a mini warehouse and self-storage for Sugar Park Lane storage on approximately 1.7995 acres located near the intersection of US 90A and Sugar Park Lane at the east of University Boulevard. We have anyone here for public hearing? Last call. All right, I'll close the public hearing. At this time, we'll move on to review of and discussion of the proposed conditional use permit. We'll go down the line. I'll try to do by order of seniority if I can remember, but I'm looking at you, Commissioner Brown, so any questions?
I'm the youngest, is that what I'm hearing?
No, well, yes, in a way.
Thank you, nice presentation. I've got some questions for you. You just mentioned something in your presentation about cars will be unloaded inside the storage building. Where is that going to be? Where in the building will storage cars go into the building? I didn't see that on the site plan.
Sorry, sir. I should clarify. I meant to say carts. Oh, that's a good question. So carts will be inside the building. They'll be used for loading and unloading.
So the courtesy cars for people to move material and possessions.
Yes, sir.
Out of the building. How many units is this going to be total? Come on up.
Come on down, otherwise we'll have to just record an angelic inspiration on that.
I'm Michael Malden, the architect for the owner. We plan on 588 units.
500
They're all interior access from the hallways. There are no exterior access units, no rolling doors outside.
Okay. Looking at the site plan, it's obvious that you're gonna be sharing on the north property line, the same access road that goes into Discount Tire today, correct?
On the back side of theirs, yes.
Yeah, so that's a shared lane there. In the presentation, she said something about the southerly access lane being a shared lane.
The actual lane on the actual drive on our property is not shared, but the access on the front,
On the front,
25 feet is a shared access.
on the cul-de-sac
Yes.
is a shared access there.
Yes.
Okay. Traffic counts, have you done any studies to tell us how many cars or how many traffic moves a
I
day
don't
we'll
think we had
have?
to have one. It's not that many. Self-storage is a very low use.
Yeah, I looked online and it was like 30 a day for something about that
Yeah, I
size.
don't know.
And that's a heavy day on the
That'd
weekend.
be a heavy weekend on moving day.
This is a question for staff. We've got, to the south of this, it appears we have a rehab facility that is essentially at the end of the cul-de-sac, and then kind of off the corner appears to be another type of home of some sort. Is this, the use is congruent, it's okay, these go together, in your opinion? The self-storage along with these other, more of a, well, it's not quite residential, it is residence-type housing.
To clarify, there is no housing in this cul-de-sac. That there's nobody living in that area. That's
Well,
just
you've got a, looking at it here on Google Earth, I can't think of the name of it, I looked it up earlier, but you've got some sort of residential housing that will be immediately to the south of it, that it appears to be a residential housing of some sort. And then you've got a rehab center.
I believe you're referring to a medical-related use.
It's a medical.
Yes, sir. So it is still compatible with the future land use plan.
Okay. And then we're not doing fencing here.
No, it's not going to be gated. However, there will be landscaping buffering around it.
That's everything I've got. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Commissioner Hart?
Just a few questions.
Were you done? I'm sorry. Did I hear you say you were done? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just a few questions, probably for staff. That shared driveway at the bottom with the medical facility center, I noticed that the driveway is all pavers. When we make that drive, are they gonna do they have to replace the pavers back to the original? Because it definitely looks like it cuts those pavers. Or you could tell me otherwise, and then that'd solve it, but there are pavers there that facility has on their driveway out to the cul-de-sac that we're gonna clip, it looks like. Or this facility would clip.
Do you have an aerial?
I have a site plan. Would
The
you like me to
aerial,
show you?
like the photograph.
Yeah.
The aerial look. That one. There you go.
Yeah, I had to look it up
I'm
on
not sure.
Google Earth.
If-
It was,
yeah. Yeah, so if there, I'm sure if there needs to be repair,
can we put that in there that
Match.
we'll put it back to the condition that it was before you, can we add that in?
that's fine,
Okay, just because that was their driveway and,
certainly.
okay. And did staff have any concerns with that intersection there? Because it's on a curve where the two are coming out. Are there any, and I know there's also a landscape buffer there coming out of that facility to the south. Do they have any issues with that coming through there, being a blind spot or anything?
The commission can recommend that as a condition that this curve will be replaced.
Guillermo Salcedo, engineering department. We didn't see any conflict with the traffic. There's,
Okay.
it's just very minimum traffic there. We don't see any problem with that.
If I may, the landscaping's talked about 40 feet, we have a 40-foot building setback. And so the shrub that we're showing, I believe, are back away, so I don't think there should be a conflict with able to see.
It's actually not your shrubs that I was worried about. It was the shrubs on the adjacent, their landscaping that seemed to encroach a little
Okay.
bit further. But that's for them to answer, not, yeah. And then also, is the two buffers between each other, are they gonna complement each other, or you know, are we gonna have trees right beside each other? Because they have a landscape buffer, we have a landscape buffer. They're shrubs, okay. That's okay. I guess the only other question I had was, when the final one comes in, are we gonna get, plats that don't say unofficial documents on it?
Yes,
Because
sir.
this gets codified, so.
Mm-hmm.
The last 2 pages of our,
Oh.
say unofficial document, and they're sealed, but, yeah, so.
You will have the official ones. That will be taken care of.
Okay, not so much for me, but for, you know, it becomes ordinance, so, okay, that's all I had. Thank you, it looks like a good project.
AP?
Thanks, Brittany, great job for your first one up here. I had just had a couple of questions on the lighting. Can you talk about what that's gonna be like, and is it just are they gonna be on during business hours? I've driven by lots of these in other locales, and the lights are pretty, it's lit pretty brightly, so I was just curious on what that's gonna look like when it's said and when it's done.
Yes, of course. So staff has found that the photometric plan does adhere to the development code regulations. They're required to have full cutoff lights around the building, so the light does not project too far out to surrounding uses. And the outlying areas of the property should have lower illuminance.
But they'll be on all 24/7, correct? For security, okay, just making sure. The other question I had was, so it doesn't look like there's any entrance or exit off of University. Is it solely off of 90 and Sugar Park Lane? So there's no entry and no exit from University, correct? But that's the adjacent street, or the street that runs in parallel to Sugar Park.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and is there any reason why it's not gated? Most of these I've seen are gated. Is that a city thing, or is that just something the developers chose not to? And that just came up because of all the shrubbery questions.
It's more of a developer choice. I've done a lot of self-storage across up and down 35 in Houston area, and we have the nicer ones that have only internal units will sometimes just do that without the fencing. The security provided at the door to the keypad entry, and it seemed to be sufficient on most areas. So that's just another version on a large 3-story or 2, 3-story type building that we've had success with.
Okay. That's all I had, Matt.
Okay. Andy?
Thank you. Brittany, can you pull up the landscaping plan for me again?
Yes, of course.
And I'm just comparing that back and forth with the photometric plan. And I appreciate that all the wall packs on the building, I didn't see those in the elevation. That may be something that might be wanted in the later renditions of the elevations to show that. But looks like on the, was that going to be the north end of the property, they've got pole lights that go out there. But it looks like that we are, and I'm trying to overlay them as best I can, but it looks like we're putting pole lights into trees again, which is great for owls and squirrels, but not for actual security of the property. But I'm having a hard time lining those up. Can you see that? Am I mistaken? Are the lights, pole lights, like basically right on top of where the trees are?
Just a moment, sir.
Sure.
So all I can say is that we'll coordinate that.
Okay.
We don't have that condition
Sure.
on and we can resubmit that if we need to.
Yeah,
Certainly would be
just,
in the construction documents and coordinate, but we can get that
all
coordinated.
right, fair enough. And then, yeah, I had the same thing. We are potentially putting something in the record that says unofficial document, and that just seemed odd. So, that's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Landine? I don't really think I have anything separately. I mean, some of the questions that I had have already been asked by other commission members. I was interested in the lack of fencing around the property. It sounds like that's a decision. I do have a question. So can people who rent the individual units, will they have, I understand that they're all interior, but will they have direct access, or will they have to check in at any kind of a desk, or can they just come and go as they please during normal business hours?
You can go with the two customer entry points.
Okay, and how do they access it? Keypad? Okay, so not a card, they have to actually punch a number in?
Currently, yes, yeah.
Is that to get into the whole property?
It's just a keypad entry.
I do.
Not a card entry or a mobile phone entry on this particular one.
And is that just to access the whole thing? What about to their individual units?
The units will be either a padlock, or they'll have are you having the phone next? Haven't decided that yet, but typically it's a padlock. Typically it's a padlock latch. that you
Okay,
see on
so
all
it's
the
a customer
self-storage.
provided lock
Yeah, the
on
customer
the
provides a
individual
lock.
unit?
Some will go into a mobile phone electronic option, a little more expensive. I don't think he's made the decision as far as which way he wants to go with that.
Okay,
But that'll be internal to each individual door.
okay. All right. Okay, well, I think you've got some other comments, some good comments from Commissioner Ushold on the lighting and the landscape plan and everyone else. So any other comments or discussion? Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 5B, review of and discussion on the proposed rezoning of approximately 3.321 acres from interim standard single-family residential R1I to planned development, PD Final Development Plan, University Commons Phase 3, located at the northwest corner of US Highway 59 and University Boulevard in Telfair, Tract 4, further described as 3.321 acres of land located in the Alexander Hodge lease, abstract number 32, Fort Bend County. Doug Schomburg. Good evening, Doug.
Beefy title there.
Say that again?
It's a beefy title. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, we're talking this evening about University Commons Phase 3, and in taking a look at this property, we're going to take a look at the vicinity map and aerial there. This is former TxDOT right-of-way. It used to be an overpass over the freeway, and now the freeway itself is elevated. This property is been interim zoned since original annexation and has been waiting PD zoning. So University Commons Phase 1 located here, Phase 2 located across the street, and this has been long anticipated as the Phase 3 eventually to connect up with the first phase. So taking a look at the Telfair General Land Plan, this excerpt here, the land plan on the left, we're in north-south, and we take a closer look on the right here, was planned for commercial, and the plan was updated when the TxDOT right-of-way was going to be able to be sold, and those quadrants on the different corners were brought into the Telfair General Land Plan. So this is in accordance with that. The boundary around this red boundary that you see also signified on the land plan that this was going to need to be developed under PD zoning as for the commercial there. Looking at the aerials here, first one on your left is just more of a standard aerial looking at it, one of our latest aerials there, and I've shown an alternative view to just get a little bit different view on the photo to the right, kind of looking toward 59. One of the things that you can see in this alternate aerial is you can see a little closer essentially the adjacent area that would interconnect. There is an actual driveway stub that was put in and planned under the first PD there for the University Commons Phase 1. You can also see things like the 10-foot side path that was installed already for that. So again, just looking different views of the property. This is designed to really try to plug in closely with Phase 1. So a little bit in general, we'll kind of go over the set of plans that we've been working with the applicant on, or some scenario planning especially for the western portion of this triangular tract. The eastern portion, in all the scenarios, has the same 15,000 square foot building on the eastern part, and the western part is really where the scenarios have some different options. There are some proposed options for drive-throughs, such as either a more of a bank style, smaller drive-through, or a drive-through for fast food in another one of the scenarios. And I'm going to go through each. The applicant is going to cover a few of the slides and talk, and so I'm not going to get into heavy detail about all the slides that we have, but we'll go through those scenarios. This proposal is in line with like I said, the expectations of the general land plan, and going into a PD. It has much similarity to the University Commons Phase 1 site. So let's take a look at option A first of all. And this eastern half, we have the essentially the building anchored down the 15,000 square foot building that doesn't change in those subsequent options. On the western portion, we have in option A, we've got a approximately 9,000 square foot building with parking. Here we see the connector. There's going to be a smaller connective spot here that's been planned for at the shopping center that's not built yet. This has a drive-through style, bank style construction here proposed in option A. So let's take a look at option B. Again, grounded with the same anchor type over here. In here we have fast food type proposal with drive-through. We've got a approximately 6,000 square foot building in front of that, so a 3-building scenario, different type of drive-through in option B. Option C here, again, very similar. In this case, we don't have drive-throughs. We've got a building, though, with circulation completely around it on that south side. Again, pretty much everything else is identical. And then finally getting to option D, this is a 2-building proposal for the overall development with square footage down here in the other building, parking in front along the side. This does not have a circulation around the back. This is basically going to be green space back here in this one. So again, the applicant had approached us saying they had several different thoughts for part of the tract, and were pretty straightforward on the eastern part. And we had suggested scenario plans to be able to vet out a number of those things. And as codified, again, they would provide a roadmap for development. I'm going to cover a number of slides. I'm not taking you through every PD slide. You've got plenty in your packet to look at. And again, the applicants anticipated to say a few words on some of them. But here's an example. And this was the type of thing that was in the development immediately to the north, University Commons. Some pedestrian amenities, things like a bench and bike rack, and a little bit wider area along with trees that would be, I'm going to call them kind of a connector from the public sidewalk out there toward the actual development itself. Again, this was very successful in University Commons Phase 1 up there in order to kind of bridge that from a friendly pedestrian element. And here we can see a little bit more into the pedestrian planning. We can see we've got the 10-foot side path here. We then have where those connector points are going to actually come in with pedestrian treatment there across the parking, some connectivity, as well as along Highway 59, just like we've done with some of the other development. The plans would require dedication of a 10-foot pedestrian access easement. So someday, if there is a shared use trail put in along 59, that will already be accounted for in terms of having that easement, and that's done at platting. That was done with the University Commons Phase 1 site as well. And we have an additional point for connectivity for that future. area there. So they are carrying out, again, some things that we thought were important with the first phase, with now this third phase. Only showing one particular option of the landscaping, again, just giving a little bit of the flavor there. And this is essentially going to be the same type of treatment that we've seen on both University Commons Phase 1 and 2. Trees, parameter trees and things with the calipers that we've been used to with PDs. Quite a bit of shrub boundaries. We also do have on the opposite side, and it's not going away. This doesn't list all the plantings here that are over there, but there's trees along here. Those are remaining. Those type of things will remain. So, and this connector's in. There'll be one connector that will be needed to be established down here. But again, that was already provided for in the University Commons Phase 1 PD. So very detailed landscape plans for those. There are a number of circulation plans, and here I just happen to include the one that's the a little bit more of the intensive drive-through type. One of the things that we had expressed to the developer and applicant in the past had been this site is essentially due to the prohibitions and limitations on US Highway 59 frontage as well as University Boulevard. There's not going to be any direct access points to this final site, and that was pretty heavily planned. So all access is going to come from University Commons Phase 1 through the 2 points, primarily here, and then there will be this additional point. So one of the things that we looked at is this as appropriate for more intensive uses from an auto-related standpoint, quick turnover, kind of a bank-type drive-through, fast food, normally a little more intensive. And that was one of the things that we are interested in some P&Z feedback. What I can tell you so far is the engineering staff has been reviewing the traffic impact analysis as they would normally. One of the things that they subsequently asked for was some queuing information to understand. I can say initially from this point that's still under review and a final determination hasn't been made on the TIA, but it's not anticipated from a standpoint of impact to 59 or University Boulevard as much, but we are looking at the shopping center in terms of it's got to go through there. Is that type of scenario appropriate to include? And again, that's something that we're interested in feedback from general uses here so that we can look at that closer. Again, that's one of the scenarios. That's option B with that type of use. And so again, we're bringing it up in this format so we can take a look at that. Some perspective drawings. I'd like to let Jason Miller talk to you a little bit more, the applicant design team, on their materials. I can tell you that these are very similar to the kind of compatibility type and complementary nature of University Phase 1 there. And they can kind of talk through a little bit more of that, about some of the use of the materials through the PD. And another comprehensive type thing that has occurred along there has been a consistent signage plan for the University Commons, especially the 59 frontage, which has fewer signs than would normally be allowed by code, but allowance for a little larger height in the multi-tenant option. That has been something that was approved in Phase 1 for that frontage property, and they've continued that proposal. It's something that we're not opposed to because we think not only they have to build them in terms of the uniformity, but the design package that's actually shown here. The messages themselves are obviously changeable, but what this would do here in much the same way as University Phase 1 is they are committing to a specific design through this with these parameters in order to have that spacing as shown, with the little bit taller and a little bit larger, but more certainty. So, kind of moving on from that, a few site photographs. Again, the site photograph up to the upper left This is standing at University Commons Phase 1 near the McAllisters. This is looking south toward the intersection with 59. Photo on the upper right is turning somewhat there. This is looking at the part of the connector there that's already in place. And then a view from Highway 59 footage looking across the vacant lot toward University Commons Phase 1. We have a little excerpt here from the future land use map. Again, this area was proposed for regional and commercial services. There's not anything that's not in alignment with that or the more detailed general land plan. As with all our public hearings this evening, all notification requirements were met, as well as things like the courtesy sign and additional notifications and hearing form. At this point, we have not received any inquiries about this, and we're not aware of any opposition at present. Some initial consideration points for tonight, and again, you're not making a decision, but looking at this from a standpoint of any feedback, we do believe that things such as the land use plan and general land plan are being carried out with this. We do think it's the specific use. It's in alignment overall with the types of development in University Commons Phase 1. One of the things I did want to point out, because it has been a few years since the commission had looked at that development, there was some limitations on drive-throughs. Drive-throughs could be used for pharmacy, and there's the CVS there, and could also be used for bank. And we have the bank at near the 59 frontage across from Costco. There were not drive-throughs for food places as an option. So that was some parameters that were in the first University Commons. So while the uses are similar here, again, they were proposing a wider use for drive-throughs, and that's one thing that, again, we want to bring up. We want to look at that closely. As we said, TIE is under review. It's not yet finalized, but they have been going deeper into it in terms of some queuing information circulation. And Guillermo is here as well if there's some initial questions on that. We mentioned the pedestrian easement along 59 that, again, was just like with the prior PD. We recommend the public hearing be conducted prior to discussion and direction. The applicant was planning on speaking a little bit from the slides, doesn't have a real formal presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions after the hearing. And I was going to reset these slides up. So if y'all want to go ahead and open that, and then, like I said, they have a brief presentation on the slides.
Okay, thanks, Doug. At this time, we will open the public hearing. We'll receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on the proposed rezoning of approximately 3.321 acres from interim standard single-family residential R1I to planned development, final development plan, University Commons Phase 3, located in the northeast corner of US Highway 59 and University Boulevard in Telfair, Track 4, further described as 3.321 acres of land located in the Alexander Hodge League, abstract number 32, Fort Bend County. Can we read it again? Okay. We have a presentation from the applicant at this time.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jason Miller. I'm with Boucher Design Group. We're the architect for this phase, as well as the original Phase 1 University Commons. So we're eager to wrap this all up, finish up the full project. I've been involved for 10 years now, so I'd be glad to get it done. A lot of it was gone over, but I just wanted to iterate with the multiple site options. The anchor tenant, the 15,000 square foot tenant, is consistent throughout. We are looking to try with the 4 versions of the plan. Maybe. There we go. Keep as much flexibility for our client, the developer of the retail side. So it's going to be mostly retail. The option A, we're envisioning a bank-type user, financial institution. Retail on the remainder, options B and C, and option D would be a type of sit-down restaurant or something of that nature. Going back to the queuing and the quick service restaurant, most of these we're looking for something like a Chipotlanes or something where it's more coming in, grabbing your to-go order and leaving. You're not looking at an extended type of queuing situation. We had previously looked at usually like Chick-fil-A and things, and those were quickly turned down. So we're aware that that's not the type of use that needs to be at this location. We're including the same types of pedestrian amenities we had on the phase one, connections to the right-of-way and the bike lanes and such, as best we can on the site, as well as future connection to 59. Landscaping is the same as well. Going to the architecture and the finishes, we are copying directly the same finishes we have on phase one, which are primarily masonry, architectural metals, stucco, things like that. So we will be keeping with that same language and that same four-sided type of architecture that we have on phase one. And the signage as well, we are keeping the same design for the same signs and utilizing that to keep that cohesiveness with the project. And that's kind of all I have to discuss, and that we're happy to answer any questions y'all may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that wants to address the commission in public hearing? Last call. All right, I'll close the public hearing and we will proceed with review and discussion. Commissioner Brown?
Good evening. Thank you. Nice presentation, Doug. Appreciate it, and thank you to the applicant. So my question is, obviously, I think the traffic counts, and I think you've got a chicken and egg thing going on, right? Until you know what kind of tenant, you don't know what kind of traffic count you're going to have.
To a degree. One of the things that I know that they've looked at in the TIA work is the general types of like the bank versus, you know, the fast food. Guillermo can talk a little bit more about some of the things they're looking at with that. Obviously, as Jason mentioned, certain types of restaurants could generate more. I will just for benefit of kind of the record, and I think everybody's aware of this, due to the fact that we not only can't zone for brands, but in some cases, even reduced square footage is not always, Starbucks is a good example of that. From a square footage standpoint, pretty small, but from a traffic generation standpoint, can be very intensive. So, you know, the sit-down style restaurant actually works very well for this because you've got a destination and you're not going to be jumping in and out usually very quick. It's partly the limitation that we have to put many conditions on fast food type eating place that makes it more difficult for us from just a zoning tool to, you know, work towards something that is less intensive with their model or not. But I did want to see, with the chair's permission, if y'all had any questions of Guillermo before we kind of moved any further from kind of some of the TIA work or things they're looking at.
I guess my question would be, the original site is this behind it is phase one, correct?
Right.
Is that what it's called?
Right.
Was that built, and was the traffic flow and the way it was set up, was it set up in advance to support something going in that had a high traffic flow in front of it?
It was set up to consider this commercial property in terms of especially an access point and that type of thing, because at that time, the city already knew that there wasn't going to be any additional due to some distances from 59 in the state. I think even as part of the sale, they didn't want any more driveways on that. However, as far as the exact, this has been zoned interim R1 all that time, so there hasn't been a lot of work on this site as far as TIA work that really got heavily into this until now.
Because even beyond the traffic count, you've got consideration for the existing businesses that are there and,
Right.
and the impact that a high traffic flow would have on those businesses parking and access to their businesses.
Right. And generally speaking, you know, this is all, we feel like it's not bad in terms of overall access to the center and that type of thing. We just can envision, again, and you don't want something not successful, as a restaurant, but we could foresee some congestion here that could be difficult to deal with because you're not getting out any other way. So again, not that it couldn't work, but it is something that we have some concerns about.
Commercial developers or developers in general, they know where their business fits and where it doesn't fit. So they'll be able to take an educated look at this themselves on that. I had one other question. You built a lot of amenities in here, or you're attempting to, for pedestrian traffic. Is there any consideration being given for how you get those people to and from the site safely? Do you tie it into a crosswalk? Is there controlled access via pushing a button for a light to flash? Because if you're gonna build it to bring them in, how are we doing it safely at an intersection like that?
In terms of the intersection at University, I don't think we've thought of any kind of crosswalk implementation yet, any kind of buttons or anything. I think our vision was to have that if people are coming off of that 10-foot sidewalk on University Commons, they're coming in straight away from there, not across the University Boulevard itself.
Okay, because you've got clearly some trash bins and benches and things like that. So just, I would encourage you to look at that in terms of how you're bringing that traffic, that foot traffic or bicycle traffic in and out across those areas. So,
Okay, certainly.
that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Commissioner Hart?
So Doug, there's no way that this site can have access from University, right?
These are the access points. There won't be any more on University or 59 over here at this corner.
So they can't change it. I mean,
That's
my
correct.
greatest fear is Costco.
Right.
That Costco, you know what that I'm talking about. The Costco gas station is
Right.
just an enormous traffic bottleneck into its own site.
Right.
And, with that traffic flow coming off of 59 turning on to University, which brings another question. Is there a traffic signal planned at that intersection? I mean, because it's gonna, if it would back up into that site, Costco. And if we put in it, and I know I'm glad I didn't hear Chick-fil-A, but, Cane's or In-N-Out Burger, one of those high, even Starbucks probably.
Guillermo Salcedo, engineer in the back. So we do have a preliminary study for that driveway to do an acceleration lane coming from that Costco going, that would be eastbound. That's the only study that we're doing right now.
From Costco?
Yeah, with not at that you talk about this intersection here at Signal?
Oh, I'm talking about this, this
You talk about-
signalization at University.
over here.
And, no, sir. For the actual
Oh,
access.
that we don't have anything,
Right.
anything on that.
No, never planned it.
Not that
Okay.
not that I'm aware. I know we
Gotcha.
had something going on the Costco driveway going, along the feeder road.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, but,
Yeah,
on
from
this
that-
one,
that-
on this one, I worry about the same thing. It's proximity to the 59. That traffic just never
Yeah,
ends coming.
nothing. You're talking about this area here. Nothing on that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware, but I can look it up for you.
Okay, so I do have great, Doug, or staff, I do have great concerns about any kind of intensive turnaround traffic going into that site for that very reason. It stagnates tremendously at Costco and wouldn't want to see that affect the existing property owners adversely for no fault of their own.
Yeah. We can look into that, but the TIA didn't cover all the way up there. Basically, only that's that intersection, that turnaround, and the intersection over there in 59, basically.
Okay,
We're still working on details on that, on the TIA with the applicant.
the signs, and I did a Google drive-through of a lot of the areas surrounding here. I don't see any 12-foot signs anywhere, especially along 59 feeder roads on either direction throughout the entire city limits.
They have not installed a number of the ones they got approval for. They have the ability to do it,
But they're not up yet.
but they're not up yet. But yes, that's what was approved as
So
as
it's
an
already been
opportunity.
pre-approved. There's no.
That
I mean, these
was-
are
right.
very. I mean, when you look at the other
Right.
signs up and down 59, they're all the 3
Right.
foot, 4 foot
The-
signs.
They that was one of the things that the P and Z and the council looked at in terms of trade-offs for fewer signs. You could put almost twice as many along the frontage of this combined with the development. The Costco looked at that too. They could have had an additional one as well. Some of them have chose not to, but they do have that option as part of that. What they're proposing to do is essentially follow the same plan.
So they mostly have the 3-foot signs along 59 instead of the 12-foot signs? I remember this
A lot of it
discussion
doesn't
before.
a lot of them have not built
Right.
59 frontage signs up to this point, but they could carry that out with what council had approved.
This isn't really, this is more a question for my own concern is.
Sure.
Where's the detention for all this? Is this in Telfair? Are we draining, is this site draining all the way north to
This
the
is-
Telfair Lakes?
This is all planned through the lid detention and that type of thing. But as far as that goes, they're not detaining on these University Commons properties.
It's actually, we'll ask for letter of objection from the lid when it comes to that, but all the projects that I haven't seen on the lid too, they say they have capacity for a lot of the project. If they now, they have to, detain on the ground, mitigate. Typically the delta, or the difference between the old drainage, TP40, what it's called, and the Atlas 14.
On the routing, let me go to the permitted land uses.
Sure.
So, again, this might be for my own curiosity. Radio and television broadcasting, does this mean they can put in those large dishes, satellite dishes to transmit a signal up?
No. This is, today's more modern version.
Okay.
Essentially, if you were in fact, like Comcast is up in University Commons Phase 2. Well, it's next to Affinity, I should say. But
Motion picture theaters, is there parking capacity in this place for motion picture theaters?
they would have to literally, of course, that could be something extremely small, but they would have to, they have to meet those parking standards.
And
if they
same with
want
the
that.
bowling, okay.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
seems, I know they just throw everything against the wall on these things.
If there, one thing I'll say, like we've talked about in past meetings, if there's some specific things that y'all want the applicant to consider in us, that from a overall compatibility standpoint, we would want to hear it. At the same time, any of the uses have got to be parked, and if they don't work for these plans, then they're not going to be able to be brought forward.
So that brings me to botanical and zoological gardens. Does that really need to be on this list? I mean, it just seems kind of,
Right.
it just seems kind of silly, but there's no harm in it, but it just seems silly.
They've essentially got for the most part, a use list that reflects the overall shopping center immediately connected to it.
And I guess back to the drive-through lanes. So the other thing I noticed with the Costco example, we have a Chick-fil-A example. This pattern, is there space in this pattern so that the parking spaces are still viable during high traffic times? I mean, it could. I don't know how many cars are in the queue here, or what it's anticipated, but I know that occurs at Chick-fil-A, where you can't even get into a parking spot or get out of a parking spot because of the queue.
Yeah,
And some of that common parking might not even be for that restaurant, but for the building to the north. And so that would, again, through no fault of their own, they're impacted by that long queue.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So this is one of the requirements that we did during the TI that we're reviewing right now is the queuing analysis of that site in case they put a drive-through lane. So make sure we understand how the traffic is gonna flow, how the cars are gonna stack on that drive-through lanes.
I do like the Chipotle example or type where it's drive up only. Okay, thank you. Good job on the presentation. Thank you. No more questions.
AP?
Yeah, I think echoing everybody else's concerns about having, there's Costco, then there's CVS, and there's all this other retail and restaurants, sandwich, and if you ever go down Wallingford and try to go down that road, it's like Mad Max, right? Trying to get through all the different side streets to get through into the retail. So that's my concern, obviously, is like just like everybody else, is that we're just adding more cars to that area, and especially if they can cut across from Wallingford then onto Westcott on the back end. To me, it just creates another point of kind of just chaos and traffic, and maybe I'm misreading that. Is that not the access point? That's possible through the Costco side street, then into Burlington Coat Factory, then back down.
The two access points on here were the ones that were set with the PD to the north.
Off of
And those
University.
are the main ones to get access to this site. And so the only thing I do want to clarify, obviously there's a lot of traffic and things, but this is planned to be zoned commercial, so it's not a matter of whether it's going to develop
Sure.
or not, obviously. At the same time, what are the types of uses and what's that intensity when we take in not only those surrounding roads, but what has been built here, like as y'all have said, what's there now as the essentially sister shopping center, sister commercial center.
Yeah, in the end, it'll have to complement what's already there, right? And that's the developer's discretion.
Right.
given
So
the
now we
area.
have this closer look, this more detailed look at this property, which was not able to be looked at heavily originally. And so how does it fit in as compatible as possible?
Gotcha. And then just the last comment, echoing, I think it was Chuck, on the pedestrian side, I just have my doubts that that's a real viable use. I know we're catering to it, but that's just a noisy, very busy kind of intersection and corner there. So we'll have to be really thoughtful about that if we're trying to make it an intentional and a pedestrian area, walkway. That doesn't just span walking in between the development there. So that was all I had, Matt.
Thanks, AP. Andy?
Thank you. And yes, echo again, thank you to everyone involved. I couldn't really tell, but I don't remember, the right turn from 59 onto University. Is that a 2-lane right turn or is that a 1-lane right turn?
I was just looking at the area.
I was about to do the same thing, but
I think it's two right turns, I think.
the question being is that if there was only one, did we need to allow space for a second one to be added at a future point?
They've got quite a bit of right-of-way when you really look at the property lines with this. The state actually sold a lot less than they originally were thinking about. So they have a wide developable right-of-way, especially along 59, and also some on University as well. So they sold less than what they originally thought they would.
Okay.
So yeah, it's quite a bit. The 59 one especially.
Okay. To echo what Tim said, one of the things I get concerned about with the signage, I know that the other signage is already approved in that, but maybe I need to ask this question first. Just looking at this plan that you have up, option B, you clearly have building 1 already, at least in discussion, for an anchor tenant. You don't really know what you want to do on the corner, but the building 2, I'm looking at that right? Yeah, building 2, is that intended to be multi-tenant or a single tenant? Or maybe that's the question. Building 1 is clearly single tenant. I think building 3 in all the iterations is a single tenant.
In this particular plan, option B, 2 and 3, those are both multi-tenant buildings.
Okay,
The only single tenant would be option A, which is a financial use. Building 2 would still be a multi-tenant building. And then option D, building 2, that would be a single tenant. But other than that, the 2 remaining retail buildings would be multi-tenant use.
okay. I know that the signage use becomes a hot button topic, but if we wound up with two single-use tenants with that whatever design you have, we've just given away what amounts to 7 panels in Sugar Land, where I know that's a hot commodity for everyone, and we have not allowed that in a lot of other developments. I almost want to see the signage restricted to the number of tenants that are projected to go in. I don't know what everyone else thinks about that, but just I see 7 panels going up for what could wind up being 2 tenants. And so don't know that that's the right use for that.
Okay, and we can work with staff on that.
And then I guess my last question for you, if you were to do a building 2 in a couple of the different scenarios that you have there, what purpose does the split between building 1 and building 2 serve? It looks like you're trying to backfill in some landscaping to go in there, which as an operator, as we talked about, you'll always have problems with, but what's the thinking behind that corridor? Is that an alley? Is that a walkway? Is that just a service area for mechanical? What
It
goes
would
on there?
primarily be service access for deliveries and such, because that property line between building 1 and 2 will be a platted property line. It'll be a separate ownership. So we're staying off of their building setbacks and such.
That explains why they're separated. All right. Okay. That was all I had. Everybody else said everything else. Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Landine?
Yeah, I had three areas I wanted to cover. First, Doug, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a hard time here. You said in your presentation that the interior amenities were in phase 1 were very successful. What is that? How are you measuring success?
Oh,
I
I'm
can't imagine
sorry.
out there.
They were able to install, though, that was something they wanted to do and successfully install. I'm not critiquing.
Gotcha. Okay.
There was,
Okay.
30
I didn't
people
figure
here
you were
on
out there
that
counting-
one day.
counting
So
bodies. So I'm gonna agree very much with AP on this one. If we're gonna, the landscape and the benches and all that stuff are wonderful. Let's put them inside of the development so that they're actually, people are gonna use them. They're not gonna go sit on a bench next to a 6-lane road. So let's if we're gonna do it, and I think it's wonderful amenities to be a part of these developments, but let's build it for, the scale at which the users are gonna actually utilize it. So that would be my encouragement on that. And, the landscape folks will figure that part out. The other piece was on circulation. I don't have strong opinions necessarily on the intensity of the usage. I would agree with AP and others that, a super high intense use is probably presents some problems. I would encourage you guys to go look, if you think about the development where Blackberry is, I don't know the number of that phase, but on the other side,
Right.
there's some odd little turns in the parking areas. The circulation's just, it's just a little odd. And I think there's seems true, like if you're at the CVS and you go back toward Costco, there's just some odd kind of turns there, and I can't articulate exactly what those are, but it's just not a, I think the circulation plan for both of those phases, if we were to redo it, knowing what we know now, we would probably do it differently. And so I think there's some lessons to be learned from both of those phases that it may just be worth going and looking at and seeing if they meet their intended purpose. And then the last thing that I'll bring up is, I don't know if we've formally talked about this, but the facade on and I'm not going to use the right language here, but the part of the building that typically houses the sign. So let's take Burlington as an example.
Okay.
Well, the backside of that is what you see off of 59, and it's construction grade materials. There's no actual facade on the backside of that residents can see. Are you following what I'm?
They did put, as far as the the wall of the Burlington, that was, all of that was,
I'm up on top.
oh, you're
of
talking
the-
about the top, okay, not the wall.
not
but
the
like
back
a-
of the wall.
Like a parapet type
But-
thing, I think is what
Yeah,
you're
say the-
talking
say
about.
the word
Maybe
again.
like the parapet type area up at the
Yeah,
very
it's
top.
elevated typically that houses
Right,
the sign
that's-
and all that.
That's what I, yeah. I'll
So,
follow you there.
so again, if we had a do-over there, I think we would ask or make a condition that the masonry would just extend around the backside of the,
Of that parapet type,
there you go,
right,
thank you.
type, instead of, right, instead of the lower.
And
Right, follow.
we may run into the same issue here, specifically on building one, but potentially on the others, but I imagine on building one, where you're gonna have a higher, overall building height, and then when you're on University coming toward 59, you're gonna see the backside of that facade. So I would just, ask the developer to consider going ahead and taking that masonry all the way around the backside of that extended part, just to make for a uniform look. So
We can visit with them about that, look at a treatment for that, just to make sure that we don't have a sort of a gap, if you will.
Yep.
I'll
That's all
follow.
I had. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple things for me. There's a note in the report that the track was previously discussed in the original planning for University Commons Phase 1 PD by both P&Z and City Council. I'd like to see an effort to collect some of those comments, or at least maybe provide us with the dates that those items were
I can provide you with the
reviewed by
dates. I
council or
doubt we're
P&Z.
gonna find a lot of detail in minutes or other things for you. I can tell you what was basically said was the
Well, let's go
understanding
with that for now then.
what's that?
No, let's go with that then.
Sure, that basically was, this was anticipated to be commercial. There was a need to essentially bring that right of way out from the state. The city did assist with that with some work with TxDOT. Newland then subsequently transferred, sold to Vista, who's developed University Commons. So what was discussed was essentially, hey, this won't be ultimately right away down here. We want this to connect. We want this corner to have some connection points. Those were built into that first step PD. We can also show you a bit of a graphic in terms of those points too that is in that first step PD. It's essentially these points.
Yeah, I think.
But that's the level. We didn't talk heavily about uses other than commercial. At that time, the applicant had hoped to, if they were able to acquire that they were going to build similar type things.
Okay.
So that's
I
probably
appreciate the
extent.
comments, and I think looking at the Phase 1 PD would be helpful.
Okay.
And then my more direct question is, and I appreciate this as a memory test, but were there any discussions about District E? In other words, was there any discussion about, we're going to do this way, and that way, and then when District E comes along with
No,
some conclusion?
not to my knowledge
Okay.
on that. We can double check, but I know there's been interest over the years in general comments about zoning cases for kind of what will the gateway into Telfair be, both this side and across. And one of the main things has been, yes, there should be a tree treatment that is going to be, placed along there. Right now, that's totally barren along this property as far as at the very corner, whereas that's planned on, on a full treatment with the landscaping plans and things for this. But beyond that, there really hasn't been. I think it's
Okay.
been more of a curiosity for the
All right,
future.
appreciate it. So my next set of questions has to do with the scenario planning, which I understand why you do it, and I appreciate it. You're trying to get feedback on as many options, but would you envision before this comes back for consideration and action that you just be presenting option A or option B or C or D, or would the plan be to present the final PD like it looks here with a lot of different options called out?
what we've talked with applicants about, and not just with this PD, one of the challenges and the frustrations that the development community has with the PDs is trying to allow some flexibility for that. Obviously, and the P&Z and Council has heard that over the years, and staff. One of the things that we have brought up over the years has been, if you want to look at several different options, we can codify those options, vet those out and codify them as options. So we're not opposed to this type of process at all, because again, there's a lot of trying to not to come back constantly, spend those multiple months trying to figure out. So again, what I would say to the commission is, if there is a scenario plan that fundamentally has problems with it, it's one of the reasons we don't put conditional use permits in PDs. It's kind of like, well, we can see the layout. Would this be reasonable? Is this not reasonable? If there's a problem with a scenario plan, either through, hey, I'd like y'all to take a second look at it, or hey, I don't think this one is appropriate, yes, that would obviously change it. But we are not proposing to whittle the applicant down to one scenario plan. We want to take these processes through to be able to move projects forward with a good level of certainty, but also work with them through it so that they can vet out what they need to.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, you know, the difficulty with that from my perspective is I get this feeling that I don't know exactly what I'm voting on. And I appreciate the flexibility. I want to be flexible. I want the developers to have options, you know, and all that. But, you know, if you approve this, for example, just to be hypothetical, okay? You could a person go with, on Exhibit 2, option A, on Exhibit 4, option C, on Exhibit 6, option D, on Exhibit 7, option A. You see my point?
Right.
Well, why not? We've approved it, and all these options are on the table, so how do you prevent that?
Well, that could be, if there's a concern about that, that could be clarified pretty straightforward in the text on that A is these buildings, B is the other. I don't think we're looking to make that real complicated for y'all on this.
Well,
so
it's not complicated. It's just if you approve all of the, if you approve that as written, then I'm looking at this 5 years from now and I'm saying, well, I'm going with A here, I'm going with B here, I'm going with D here.
That's not the way we administrate, but I understand what you're talking about, and that can be clarified.
Okay.
I mean, that's not how we administrate PD site plans, but.
I understand, but, you know, since this is going to get codified as ordinance, I guess, then I have a concern about how that's going to be interpreted. And then the other thing is, I mean, you've heard that, I'm not going to belabor the concerns about traffic, but philosophically, I mean, how do you regulate that? If you allow, and I'm sorry, my eyes are terrible, so I can't see, but, you know, on the, I guess this would be the, you know, the part of this development that's closest to the intersection of University and 59, where you're showing options for a drive-through and whatnot.
Right.
If you approve that for a restaurant, and let's say you approve it for a drive-through, you can't control if the tenant is, and I'm not going to use any names because we've already talked about lots of America's greatest corporations tonight, but you cannot control if that's, let's say, a high-density, high-use drive-through or a lower intensity, lower use drive-through, correct?
That was exactly my comments at the beginning, is that through zoning, unfortunately, we're, you know, other than you could say, well, I don't want a large restaurant here or those things, but again, even small can generate that. So I don't think if you do a eating place with drive-through there, that's what I was saying at the beginning. Essentially, I was trying to clarify for y'all. Maybe I didn't do a good job of that.
No.
But what I'm saying is, I don't think we have the tools to narrow that and safeguard that to the extent that we need to. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to bring it up. We wanted to talk to y'all about it, and we feel like that's the most concerning out of the
right.
what
And
we're
so,
seeing.
with all due respect, you know, just saying, well, you know, we understand that some restaurants, you know, or some drive-throughs wouldn't work well as others. That's I appreciate that, but if the PD allows for a drive-through, you lose basically operational control over what goes in, right? Are we agreement on that?
That's essentially correct, because it can be true that it is lower key, but we can't control that, and again, I can't see a way from a zoning standpoint to really bore into that
There's not a
issue.
tool to.
I just don't think so.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Yes,
All right. Well, you've heard the other concerns on that as well, and, yeah, and I mean, again, I'm gonna sound a little bit frustrated, I don't mean to, but we've gotten a couple of these now where the TIA has been in progress, or staff has reviewed the TIA, it's not final. So again, I understand that before this comes back for consideration and action, that'll be complete, the TIA will be complete, and we'll have something concrete to talk about. But it's also dependent on what the, I don't know how you, let me ask it like this, I'll ask a question. Is the TIA going to be done for each of these different options? Are you going to look at each of these options separately and do a TIA for each one?
So, Guillermo, so again, the excellent question. We do look at through every time we get a CUP, we did ask for all the options they're proposing and talked about each option during the TIA. What happened if you put a drive-through? What happened if you put just the 3 buildings? So we look at, so one of the discussion that we have with the applicant, with the consultant, is that we need understand the queuing if you do put a drive-through lane. So all TIA is based on all the exhibits that you see.
Okay, so when this comes back and the TIA is complete, we'll be able to see option A, this is what it said, option B, this, I'm not prejudging it, I'm just saying, we'll get basically a report on the conclusions of the analysis relative to each of the options.
That's correct. The TIA should have a conclusion for each of the options that you have.
Great.
I wanted to see if I could, though, kind of talk a little broader than that, based on, again, kind of what I'm hearing with this. What I'd like to see, if we're able to come away tonight from any kind of overall understanding of whether the commission, this is very common, we've done that for years, from a standpoint of uses, what the commission is generally comfortable with or not, because you can mitigate to a degree certain things. It won't mitigate the worst case scenario. I think we just need to be upfront about that in terms of popularity of a restaurant or something like that. One of the things the applicant wanted to do, they did not want to go through a workshop. They wanted to move straight forward. We said we can do the hearing, but we're not going to do consideration and action. But I said, I think we can get some feedback on the whole issue of, is this area appropriate for drive-throughs, especially restaurant ones, which were not, which were deemed not appropriate for the University Commons up there. So if there's something that we can take away just from a general summary, I think that's much appreciated tonight. If not, that's understandable.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to speak for the entire commission. I mean, you've heard concerns about traffic flow. You've heard concerns about density. They all seem to be connected to a drive-through on that one particular piece of it. And it doesn't seem like, there's a real opportunity to mitigate it. If you allow a drive-through to go there, then you may get, like we said earlier, you may get, high-intensity use, one, or may not.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of concerns just about traffic, and it all seems to be connected to that. But I'll let the individual, I won't let, but I'll ask individual commissioners to comment. Commissioner Hart, I think you had asked us to make another comment as well, so go ahead.
And it was concerning the TIA, they're not, usually they don't extend into like a parking lot, or do you? You don't
They're
route the
looking
traffic
at
through
that.
the
They're
parking lot,
looking at
right?
some of that through a queuing plan. Normally, no, that's true. In this case, they wanted to go a little further due to, frankly, our concerns up front.
Okay. Fair.
But I'm not sure that even if there is some type of, typical queuing that could work, I'm not sure that the planning staff is necessarily going to ultimately recommend that to you. That it all hinge on that one thing. Meaning, that may be a scenario we don't recommend.
Sure. And along the lines of a drive-through, I'd be more apt to be okay with a drive-through pharmacy or a drive-through bank, not a drive-through restaurant.
That was the
seemed to me-
determination that,
Yeah.
that the phase one was, and of
Yeah.
course, there's some proximity to other, development that's,
Right. Let's just say high traffic drive-through
mhm.
facility.
Let me open up again. Any other comments? Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, Doug, are there any deed restrictions, anything that limit the number of restaurants that maybe we're overlooking at this point in time?
I'm not familiar with any as far as that goes, but we can see we also have the property manager for Vista to see if they know anything as well on that. They wanted to know if there's any deed restrictions that affect anything as far as restaurants or number of things. Any recorded restrictions.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't deal with that.
It could be.
Yeah, not that they're aware of.
In the traffic study that comes back, is that just simply, they're gonna come back with data for counts, or is it a recommendation that this type of use works? Or is it just simply the TIA gives us a traffic count that then we need to make a subjective decision on?
So if you look at the size, it's hard to mitigate. If there's any mitigation, will come out on the TIA. But right now it's a diesel lane going to that first driveway. So
So the TIA is just simply gonna recommend mitigation. And it's not gonna come back and tell us that this use is gonna generate this much traffic. It's just gonna simply give direction on design.
the TIA will give you all the traffic count and for each scenario, for each particular scenario. So that will be in the TIA.
Right, but we get that traffic count, but
Correct.
when I'm getting a number that's like, it's 300 cars, what's the practical application for that? Does that overtax the site? Does that put a burden, or what comes out of that reporting beyond that traffic count?
There is a conclusion on that, and then if we agree with that, we concur. Otherwise, we tell them, no, we cannot concur on your drive-through, for example, for a high-density restaurant or a
So
high-density.
you would take a look at that and
Yes.
see the fit?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Landy, you had a question?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're talking a lot about TIA. That's one thing, right? That tells us about circulation and intensity of use on University and 59. What we really need to be asking for here, in my estimation, is a queuing plan for these uses. So traffic, TIA, yes, let's do that, let's take it into consideration. But if we could come back with the next iteration of this that articulates what the queuing plan is for, a financial institution, what a queuing plan is on all these different options, that then gives us a basis from which to make recommendations. But, just looking at these pictures they don't give us any indication about, flow, where cars go if you've got 20 of them in line, right?
Well,
So-
and I guess that's why I'm coming back to a little more specific. You can show a queuing that can work, but what I'm saying is the commission and the council has the ultimate authority to say, we think that use is too intensive here. Is that what was envisioned here? And we cannot guarantee you that it's not going to be too intensive, no matter what type of plan. So that's why I've tried to be as open as I can about that, because we're not just here trying to shove it in to make it work. If it doesn't seem like it's appropriate from a land use standpoint overall, and frankly, up to this point, planning hasn't changed its concerns on that. We believe it's not the appropriate place for a drive-through fast food restaurant because we don't have the controls to make sure that's limited. They can show and they can go that next step. I just wanted to kind of back up and say, through these PD processes, the uses are your driver, and is it appropriate? Is it concerning? There's a limit to the guarantees we can have, especially the way we can't bore in with some additional zoning tools. But yes, we can show that additional information.
And I think, it just doesn't really make sense to me why we would be, maybe the applicant asked for feedback on these scenarios, but if if staff views this as a non-compatible use, anything that's being presented, then I guess I don't understand why we're soliciting feedback. Am I missing
We would
something?
present an applicant's proposal to y'all that we would not tailor pick that, we would not cherry pick that to not show them. That wouldn't be, we wouldn't operate like that. We're gonna show the proposal, and we've made some feedback to them, we've given them that, and this is what they wanted to go forward with and get that information. So I just don't want you to think we didn't have any input to it, but also that's their ability to come forward and show it to you, and that's what we've done.
Got it.
So,
I appreciate that. I would say, for my taste, there's a difference between saying in the staff report, staff has concerns about this, and staff believes this is not a compatible use for this property. That's a big difference. And with the latter is what I just heard you say. Correct?
we haven't had it proved up that it's not a concern, yes.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, the only guidance then I'll give you on that is, if this comes back for consideration and action, I think staff should take a position on that and tell us whether or not it's, in your judgment, that's compatible use for that property, not just that you have concerns.
We would do that with all our recommendations.
Okay.
If there's an indication that we haven't, I hope that's not true with our recommendations when we recommend on the CNAs to y'all. So,
No,
Yeah.
I understood. Anything else? Can we give you any other guidance at this point?
just a quick summary, we do that when we've got several elements. One of the things that we're going to look with them further is some of the pedestrian elements to see if some of that could be brought further internal. I think that's a great point, especially as we get closer to the intersection. Which again, any kind of shared use path along 59 may be a long ways off at this point in time. We're going to have them conclude the TIA work, obviously, and if there's some options that we feel should be whittled down, we're going to make that suggestion to them, and we will definitely, just like we always do, we will be giving you a recommendation about what we support and do not on that. So.
Appreciate that. And if there's any proposal there for, whether involving a drive-through, whether it's for a restaurant, whether it's for like a pharmacy or anything like that, I think a queuing plan for that would be helpful if it's presented.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. Thank you, Doug. Thank you to the applicant. We will move on to item 5C. This is review of and discussion of the proposed rezoning of 22.237 acres from Planned Development PD General Development Plan Ordinance Number 1969 to Planned Development PD Final Development Plan Imperial West Business Park. Laura Waller. Good evening, Laura.
Good evening. I am back again with Imperial. This time we're moving a little bit further south, so this is going to be at South Stadium Drive and Alternate 90. This area is across from Champion X, formerly known as Nalco, and it's which is zoned M2. That's our pretty heavy industrial site. This is proposed to be more in line with M1, so light industrial uses. A series of approximately 10 buildings that will be primarily office warehouse, but will also include some of our more intense services and retail uses, things like furniture repair, larger type studios, woodworking, that kind of stuff. In addition to the industrial uses. So since it's already been a little bit of a late night, we're gonna kind of push through this a little on the quicker side. This is just over 22 acres at South Stadium Drive and US Alternate 90. It's proposed to be 6 reserves built in 3 phases. That includes 10 buildings and 1 25-foot access utility easement that would extend west from South Stadium and then north. Phase 1 will be all of the easement as well as reserves A 1 through 4. And then phase 2 will be either reserve B or C, whichever sells first. And phase 3 will be whatever one is left over. So it might not necessarily, it might go A, C, B or A, B, C, either one of those 3 phases. This rezoning is to the final development plan for warehouse and office, and like I said, more intense retail and services to be in line with the Imperial General Land Plan and the General Development Plan. This is called for as part of the Imperial Business Park, so to be in line with what you see typically in the Sugar Land Business Park. So this is the site layout. As you can see, 10 buildings, and then this does have all the reserves called out. So reserves A1 and A2. A3 would be 2 buildings here. A4 is 1 building. And then reserve B is 2 buildings here on the left. And then reserve C is 3 buildings on the right. Again, phase 1 would be all of the utility and access easement and all of the A reserves. And then either C or B and then C. The landscape plan does include complete shielding of parking lots as well as shade trees along South Stadium as well as along the access easement. So any parking would all have to meet the higher intensity shrubbery type counts, bigger caliper trees, as well as more often than what our normal dev code standards are because this is a PD. Our pedestrian and bicycle circulation plan does have kind of the standard public public sidewalks. There is something a little bit different about this side is that we did call out pedestrian walkways along the parking areas at the front of each of the buildings. Those would have to be shaded either with canopy or with trees along those areas, just make them a little bit nicer, be the nicer paving, because we didn't want to necessarily have those really nice walkways where there's going to be a lot of 18-wheeler truck because this is a more intense use site. So rather than across the drive aisles and things like that, we'll leave that up to the developer to decide and have the nicer areas here along the fronts of the buildings. Here are a couple of proposed elevations, including the front of maybe a office warehouse, and then the back, so you can see the roll-up doors, a little more intense uses, as well as a 2-story option. So there might be office warehouse on the bottom, and then maybe more retail on the top. Perspective. These perspectives will be codified, however, they are conceptual. That is noted on there. This would be looking into the access easement from South Stadium Drive. So here on the left would be one of the reserve A's, I believe it's reserve A2, and then on the right would be reserve C, and then you can see at the back this would be reserve B. A more aerial or bird's eye view, so you can see just another example. This would be the long retail building there at the front of A2, and then you can see the smaller 2 buildings in reserve A3, and then this would be A4 over here. This is an excerpt from the general land plan that was approved by P&Z and Council. This is, as I mentioned, a business park district, so that was called out to be somewhat in line with the Sugar Land Business Park as more intense services and retail, as well as the office warehousing, light industrial type uses. Public hearing requirements were all met. The HOA developer notified as well. Courtesy notification sign was posted at the property. An online form was available as well. We did receive 1 phone inquiry. However, staff is not aware of any opposition. That phone inquiry was fairly general, just asking, what is this public hearing for? And it's for an office development. Initial consideration points is that the FDP is in alignment with the general land plan and the general development plan, as well as the future land use plan. This does include a specific use list that's tailored to this development, primarily light industrial and more intense retail and services. Pedestrian walkways were provided along the fronts of the buildings for shaded access to those parking areas. Engineering staff has reviewed and cleared comments for the traffic impact analysis for the site, and it does align with what's shown in the site layout and phasing plan. It includes 2 deceleration left turn lanes as well as a single right turn lane. And then the exhibits do include 1- and 2-story elevation examples, as well as the renderings for the potential final product. So staff does recommend holding that public hearing and then having discussion and direction. And we also have the applicant here for any questions you might have. And happy to answer that after the close of the public hearing.
Thank you, Laura. At this time, we'll open the public hearing and receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on the proposed rezoning of 22.237 acres from Planned Development PD General Development Plan Ordinance Number 1969 to Plan Development PD Final Development Plan, Imperial West Business Park. Do we have anyone here tonight for a public hearing? Last call. All right, I'll close the public hearing and we will move on to review and discussion. Commissioner Brown?
Y'all are busy at Imperial. So, rock and roll. This is a great spot for this development. Was very pleased to see this come along. Just got a couple of quick questions. It looks like on the back, what would be the southwest corner, northwest corner, it looks to be some kind of road that dead ends into the railroad easement. What is that?
That's access to get to some of the city's property on the other side that we have to maintain things for.
There's
So
a crossing.
yes, it's a crossing across that railroad that has to be provided. Yes.
Okay. Curious as to what that was. And then there's a comment in the Exhibit B3, second page, that talks about outdoor facility for animal services. I think we talked about this on the Highway 90 development where the HEB is. We've also got a restaurant being considered for this development. Are we making sure that the outdoor pet area doesn't go next door to the restaurant? We talked about that last time.
Yeah, we can add that as a note for the outdoor facility.
Gotcha. Other than that, that's all I've got on that. Thank you.
Can I jump? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but will that be added like to the note? Because there's currently a note on the pet thing. There's a note too on the pet daycare thing that talks about, I think it says from memory, no more than 5,000 square feet. It's also got to be fenced, right?
Yes, so it'll be added under with that outdoor facility for animal services. It'll be
Okay.
added as a letter D.
I was just curious where that was going to go. Thanks, sorry. All right, Commissioner Hart.
Your mic isn't on.
I have a loud mouth anyway, so I'm sure you can hear me cry. This isn't, you're not planning an Amazon distribution facility here? No. Okay. Can I ask staff, what's a macro alcohol production? Is that a distillery or a brewery? Is that
Yes.
exactly what that is?
It's just a large scale rather than small scale. So like the microbrewery is typically smaller scale and it's got a restaurant associated with it. The macro is primarily for large wholesale rather than individual sale.
Okay, but not like a Budweiser plant? Okay.
No.
Are those defined terms? Are those TABC terms? Do you know?
They are defined in TABC law.
Right.
Yes, I'm not sure exactly what the number is or where the dividing line is.
Got it.
I think
And probably volume, I'm assuming it's volume.
I'm assuming. Mhm.
I think that would. Do you have any idea what the distribution would be for 2-story versus 1-story? Because I think I had missed that elevation of the 2-story buildings. Most of the renderings were 1 stories. No composition.
No, at this time, and I'm Jerry Alkey with Johnson Development. At this time, we just wanted it as an option. If we saw a use for more office, we figured the first floor will be a lot more retail use in the warehouse. But if somebody wanted to take a 2-story building to give themselves office on the second floor, we wanted to have that ability.
Okay. And I'd like to echo, it was from that side, about the treatment on probably the perimeter buildings that would be exposed to viewing from the highway. The interior buildings, not so much. Perimeter buildings, it's difficult to find the backs and the fronts, and which is, if they all face outward, then it's not an issue, and where the backs would be facing inward. But, I thought that was a very astute comment, and it's been a problem here in the past.
Yeah, so this is an example. So this is the front of the building. The fronts of the buildings are going to be the ones that face the street. It's the so if you so here this is potentially the front of building, or I'm pointing at the screen with my finger. This is the front of the building here. So the backs of the buildings will be the ones that are more internal. So here in the middle is the back versus the front up here. So I'm going to go back.
So they're all, the buildings are all front facing towards streets?
Yes, so here they all front face towards the parking and the street. It's just these areas at the back where there would be the bay areas.
Yeah,
But along the streets and the access easements are going to be the fronts of the building or landscaping.
Okay. That's good. All right. That's good. Thank you very much. That's all I have, Commissioner.
AP?
No, I agree. This is looks like it's a good spot for this project. One maybe silly question, given that the Space Cowboys are now there and it's not the Skeeters, did we take into account the increased traffic because of that, since it's a different, level of baseball?
Yeah, there was a TIA that was conducted, and it did address all of the pass-by traffic as well that's going to be coming down South Stadium. Yes.
Okay, that was all I had, just making sure that we took into account that it's going to be, there's more people there now.
Good question. Andy?
Thank you. Couple of just questions. What we're looking at is just this section for this element, correct? Just what we see here on the.
Yes, this is the 22 acres.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure of that, because it looked like there was another section that peeled across the top of.
So that's part of the general land plan, and that was already taken care of. It's already
Got it.
been taken care of.
Is there a height restriction on these buildings?
There is. It's in the text of the document.
Wasn't a pretty picture.
Maximum height is 60 feet, except for chimneys and ornamental spires and other miscellaneous roof equipment that can go up to about 15 feet above that. So 75 is the hard maximum, 60 is the rooftop.
Okay, so can you squeeze 3 stories out of that? No, you can squeeze 3 stories out of that, right?
Potentially.
Okay. Looking at the renderings, the backside looked like all of that was, as we were just talking about, not dock height, just looking at it. Is that the intention here? Is there any restrictions about building this dock height?
They could build it to dock height. That's up to the individual building builder, developer. That would come through the site plan phase.
Sure. Thinking that it could be dock height, are these pathways big enough for trucks to get to the back buildings?
Yes, sir. We've worked with the applicant, with our buyer, and they're setting 120 feet across the back so that we made sure that they could have turn-in radius for the 18-wheelers if they went dock high.
All right. Yeah, those are the little questions I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Landine? I'm good as well. Looks great.
Thank you all so much.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, Laura. Thanks to the applicant. We will move on to item 6A, Planning and Zoning Commission Liaison Reports. Council meetings, March 15 and March 22nd. Who had either or both of those?
Which one?
March 15th and March 22nd.
Oh, no.
Anyone?
That was in April.
Maybe perhaps one of our absent members.
Yes, I think it was Commissioner Smith.
Okay, we could double back. How about April 5th?
There you go. That was
All
me.
right, there we go.
Nothing super material for us. They just announced that they're forming a citizens legislative task force. They did an announcement that today is like Space Cowboys Day, since it's their opening night. And then the last thing was just council approved a zip line kind of outdoor adventure tree rope course at the Brazos River Park called Go Ape. It's a franchise based out of Plano. That was pretty much it. It was a pretty short and sweet meeting.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Preek. City staff report.
Next scheduled meeting is the 28th of April, and we know we'll have a public hearing on some zoning along Stiles Lane and Derry Ashford from B2 to M1 in that site, which is within the business park area. May have 1 or 2 items, but we're still looking at that agenda, so that's all we have.
Questions for staff?
Hey, Doug, real quick, and this may, Lisa, maybe best directed to you, I'm not sure. Can you guys just give us a general sense update? Obviously, we spent a lot of time on the Sugar Creek deal, and I know that there was some, the council meeting was interesting. Can you just give us a sense of where all that stands and for what it's worth?
Yeah, so the applicant is working through providing some of the questions and items that the mayor and city council outlined in that workshop. And when we are ready to move forward, or when they're ready to move forward, we'll have the public hearing, which is the next step in the process, as well as the first consideration of an ordinance.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Well, first,
Oh,
Thank you very much, Doug and Lisa, appreciate it. Now,
motion to adjourn.
I've got a motion to adjourn, is there a second? I've got a second by Commissioner Ushold, all in favor? We are adjourned, thank you, everyone.
Get after it.
Well, he